All right, Tanya, it's good to be with you again. Have another video, another podcast on today's topic is going to be on the uncertainty in the current times, and so we're going to do a kind of a current event, things that we're experiencing in the marketplace, and would love to hear your perspective, um, in the business cycles and things of things like that.
Sure. Thanks, Drew. It's good to be with you too. In fact, we were just kind of talking about some of these things that we're seeing in the news, kind of a lot of the ups and downs, and thought it would be maybe a good time to just zoom out a little bit and provide some perspective to what we're seeing, to put some context to the daily changes I'm sure that we're all reading as we're, looking through our papers and everything, getting caught up on current events. I thought it would be pretty cool to note, that we are in, our longest expansionary phase. Um, January 2020 marked our 10 years in this expansionary phase in the United States. And so,
Can you
thinking
kind of
about,
explain a little bit about what that means, the expansionary phase?
sure. So you have this, typical business cycle. You're going to have an expansionary phase where you're going to see lots of growth. You're going to see low interest rates. You're going to see, government and fiscal policies that align with encouraging consumers to spend, basically. Um, and so, we saw that. You saw a lot of growth, a lot of companies. You saw it in the stock market. You saw um, jobs and employment, new job creation, things like that start to boom in this expansionary phase. In a typical business cycle, once things start to kind of top off, you're going to see fiscal policy and government step in to try to cool things off a bit, slow spending down. Um, and so, things that you're going to see in this phase are typically um, high interest rates, inflation, just efforts to slow some consumer spending down, slow some of that growth time down in an effort to help the economy stabilize and digest a lot of that growth. So, oftentimes we hear it coined as recession, but I think it's important to realize it is all a part of kind of this healthy cycle of growth, right? Can't just be a linear growth and progress. You've got to kind of stop and digest before you can pick up and go again.
Gotcha.
Um, and so that's kind of some of the things that I know we're all reading, experiencing gas prices. As we go to the grocery store, just got tires the other day. And the comparison from 2 years ago was definitely felt. But knowing, of course, that this is all a part of kind of a natural progression of things. Of course, we can't time when these things happen, but just knowing that it's a part of you know growth and this cycle hopefully provides some perspective as to what we're experiencing and also how we can maybe best position ourselves to be strategically prepared for when these times do come.
Like that. Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, from my perspective, what I've been reading in the news, kind of seeing the different publications, just this morning, Jerome Powell, the head of the Fed, um, produced a report for the past year of 2022, and just, I guess, reiterating what you just shared with us with the rise in interest rates, unemployment being impacted by the market corrections as we're going through those business cycles as you were describing. Kind of things that I've been seeing in the dental practices that I've been as I'm working with these dentists is they're also feeling the rates increase for their in salaries for their office staff and their clinicians, their clinical assistants. And even so, um, in the report that was put out by Jerome Powell, he said that there would be a 4 to 6% increase in their wages. And so if you're a dentist and you're looking at your P&L statement and you're seeing the change year over year, and comparing what you paid in 2022 compared to 2021, hopefully you fall within that range of 4 to 6%. And so I've actually seen different practices where that rate of increase was closer to 20 to 30%. So, as you're making these budgets for the upcoming year, perhaps you can put that into perspective and saying, my employees, they're asking for uh, increase in their wages, just like you were describing. Those tires cost a lot more than they did just a couple of years ago, and so your employees, they're experiencing that financial pinch as well. And so, speaking with your heart, perhaps you feel for your employees and want to give that raise, but it's making those fiscal decisions for your business, that where the market is, you would expect to see a 4 to 6% increase. And perhaps maybe you can adjust the roles and responsibilities of your staff to warrant a higher raise. But that'd be something that we could keep in mind. Also, with the if we think about back in 2019, with the patient or the population that was surrounding your dental practice, it probably looks a lot different than what it looks like right now. And depending on where you live, right? If you're currently in New York City, I had a good friend who was a traveling nurse, and she would be walking through the city, and it looked like a ghost town, right? Because all the people had fled from the city centers out into, suburbia or into the rural areas. And now that the recession is occurring, you see that the population is starting to migrate back to the city centers, back to where the jobs are located. And so when you're making your strategic plan and you're taking into account your patient panel, perhaps you'll see that your patient panel is not going to reflect what it looks like pre-COVID, because the population that you're drawing your patients from has now changed. And so, those are some of the market corrections, some of the things that we're seeing and experiencing, and just wanted to share that little tidbit with you and hope that's helpful. Anything else you want to add for us today, Tanya?
I'm sorry, Drew. Some thoughts came to mind as you were kind of speaking. I'm curious if you've seen anything on, the impact of inflation on dental goods,
Mhm.
and what that does to, like what that does to the bottom line for these practices.
Right. And so in that same report over the year, you would expect a 68% increase in dental supplies. And so some of these dentists, who don't belong in a larger network or in a franchise where they can leverage, their spending to their vendors, their suppliers, they're paying at a higher rate right now.
Hmm.
So that's also, something to take into account as you're looking at your financial statements, at your books. Perhaps, like I mentioned, your staff is seeing an increase in their pay, but now your pay as the business owner has decreased. And that seems a little bit backwards. But it's important to kind of look into the suppliers and the expenses that you're currently making.
Awesome.
Hopefully that answers, and hopefully that makes sense.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Tanya?
No, I think that was such a good roundup of kind of what, just the brief tidbit of what we talked about. So,
Okay, sweet.
yeah.
Well, it was a good episode. Hopefully that's a benefit to our dentists out there who are working hard and going into the new year with their New Year's resolutions. And hopefully that helps you with your strategic plans. We'll catch you again next week.